You've been taught that thinking highly of yourself is arrogance, that putting yourself first is selfishness, that your worth should come from how much you sacrifice for others, how little you ask for yourself, how small you make yourself so others can feel big. And now you wonder why you feel worthless, why you can't accept compliments, why you apologize for existing, why you feel like a fraud no matter what you achieve, why there's a voice in your head that says you don't deserve happiness, success, love, or even basic dignity. What if everything you were taught about self-worth was a lie? What if the very morality you absorbed, the morality of selflessness and sacrifice, is the poison that destroyed your ability to value yourself? Ayn Rand saw through this lie. She escaped Soviet Russia, where she watched an entire civilization built on the premise that the individual doesn't matter. She came to America and built a philosophy that places the self at the center of moral concern. And at the heart of that philosophy was a concept that modern culture desperately needs: rational self-esteem. Not the fake self-esteem of participation trophies. Not the hollow affirmations that mean nothing. Real self-worth, earned through living according to your own judgment, achieved through becoming someone you can genuinely admire. For the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you why you struggle with self-worth and what Ayn Rand discovered about how to build it authentically. This isn't about feeling good. It's about becoming good and knowing it. Stay with me. This could change how you see yourself forever. Before we continue, I need to ask you something uncomfortable. When you look in the mirror, do you like who you see? Not your face, your character, your choices, your life. When you're alone with yourself, are you someone you respect? Leave a comment if this question hit something deep, because the answer reveals everything about your relationship with yourself. Ayn Rand was born Elisa Rosenbaum in St. Petersburg, Russia, in 1905. Her childhood was comfortable, until the Bolshevik Revolution destroyed everything her family had built. She watched as the state seized her father's pharmacy. She watched as individual achievement became a crime. She watched as people were taught that their lives belonged not to themselves, but to the collective. What she witnessed wasn't just economic destruction. It was psychological devastation. An entire population was being taught that their individual worth was zero, that they existed only to serve others, that wanting anything for themselves was moral failure. Rand saw what this does to human souls. It doesn't create kindness. It creates emptiness. People who believe they have no right to exist for their own sake don't become generous and loving. They become bitter, resentful, and secretly hostile. They give not from abundance but from guilt. They serve not from love but from fear. When Rand escaped to America at 21, she vowed to fight this philosophy everywhere she found it. And she found it everywhere, not just in Soviet communism, but in the moral teachings of the West that told people the same fundamental lie. Your worth depends on what you sacrifice for others. This is the core of Rand's insight about self-worth. You cannot have genuine self-esteem if you believe your life belongs to others. Think about what that belief means practically. If your purpose is to serve others, then your success is measured by their benefit, not yours. If your worth comes from sacrifice, then the more you give up, the better you are, which means your flourishing is bad and your suffering is good. If selflessness is the ideal, then having a self at all is a moral problem. Is it any wonder that people raised on this morality struggle with self-worth? They've been taught that valuing themselves is wrong. They've been programmed to feel guilty for their achievements, ashamed of their desires, apologetic for their existence. The first step to authentic self-worth, Rand argued, is rejecting this entire moral framework. Your life belongs to you. Your happiness is a legitimate goal. Valuing yourself is not arrogance. It's sanity. If this is making you question things you've always believed, if you're feeling that mix of recognition and resistance, I need you to do something now. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. Not for vanity metrics, but because this message about self-worth could help millions of people who've been taught to hate themselves. And what comes next is where Rand's philosophy becomes genuinely transformative. Rand distinguished between two types of self-esteem, and understanding this distinction is crucial. The first type is what she called social metaphysical self-esteem. This is worth that comes from others, from approval, from fitting in, from meeting expectations. The person with social metaphysical self-esteem feels good about themselves when others praise them, and bad when others criticize. Their sense of worth is borrowed, dependent, always at risk. This is what most people have. This is what self-help books often reinforce when they tell you to seek validation, to surround yourself with people who appreciate you, to find your tribe. All of this makes your worth dependent on external sources. The second type is genuine self-esteem. This is worth that comes from within, from your own judgment of your own character. The person with genuine self-esteem knows they're worthy because they've made themselves worthy through their choices and actions. External approval is pleasant, but not necessary. External criticism might be considered but doesn't devastate. Rand's question is simple. Where does your sense of worth come from? Is it yours, or is it rented from others? First question for you. If everyone you know suddenly disappeared, if there was no one left to impress or please or gain approval from, would you still feel worthy? Would you still like yourself? Or would you collapse without the external scaffolding? Be brutally honest, because if your self-worth depends entirely on others, you don't actually have self-worth. You have other worth, and it can be taken away at any moment. So how do you build genuine self-worth? Rand's answer is challenging but liberating. Self-esteem, she argued, has two components. The first is self-efficacy, the confidence that your mind is capable of dealing with reality, that you can think, that you can figure things out, that you're not helpless before the world. The second is self-respect, the conviction that you're worthy of happiness, that you deserve good things, that your existence has value. Both are essential. Self-efficacy without self-respect creates the competent person who doesn't believe they deserve to enjoy their competence. Self-respect without self-efficacy creates the entitled person who believes they deserve good things but can't produce them. Genuine self-worth requires both. I can deal with reality, and I'm worthy of the good that comes from dealing with it well. How do you develop self-efficacy? By using your mind, by thinking, by facing reality instead of evading it. Every time you confront a problem and solve it, your self-efficacy grows. Every time you make a decision based on your own judgment, rather than deferring to others, it grows. Every time you pursue truth, even when it's uncomfortable, it grows. Conversely, every time you evade thinking, every time you let others decide for you, every time you deny reality because facing it is hard, your self-efficacy erodes. You send yourself the message, I can't handle this. I'm not capable. The person with low self-efficacy feels helpless. They believe they can't figure things out, so they don't try. They defer to experts, authorities, the crowd. They become dependent on others, not just emotionally, but cognitively. Their mind becomes something they don't trust. Rand would tell you, the path to self-efficacy is using your mind courageously, thinking for yourself, making your own judgments, facing reality as it is, not as you wish it were. How do you develop self-respect? By living according to your values, by becoming someone you can admire. This is crucial and often misunderstood. Self-respect is not about feeling good. It's about being good, by your own standards. The person with genuine self-respect has standards, lives up to them, and therefore knows their worth is deserved. If you have no standards, or if you constantly violate the standards you claim to hold, you cannot have self-respect. You can pretend. You can use affirmations. You can tell yourself you're worthy. But deep down, you know you're not living with integrity. Rand's path to self-respect is not comfortable. It requires that you define your values, commit to them, and actually live by them. It requires that you become someone who deserves their own admiration. This is earned self-esteem. It's not given by others. It's not granted by birthright. It's built through the daily choices that make you into the person you're proud to be. Second question, what are your values? Can you articulate them clearly? And when you look at your actual life, are you living by them? Or is there a gap between who you claim to be and who you actually are? Write your reflection in the comments, because this gap is where self-worth goes to die. Rand identified several enemies of self-worth that operate in our culture. The first enemy is the morality of sacrifice. When you're taught that your worth comes from what you give up, you can never win. The more you sacrifice, the more is demanded. The better you are by this standard, the less you have. You become depleted, resentful, and unable to believe you deserve anything, since deserving comes from sacrificing, which means never having. The second enemy is the morality of humility. When you're taught that thinking well of yourself is sinful, that pride is a vice, that you should always minimize your achievements and maximize your flaws, you program yourself for low self-worth. Humility as accurate self-assessment is fine. Humility as self-deprecation is poison. The third enemy is the cult of the collective. When you're taught that the group is more important than the individual, that you should subsume your identity into something larger, that standing out is wrong, you learn that your individual self has no value. Only the collective matters. And since you can never fully merge with the collective, you're always inadequate. The fourth enemy is determinism. When you're taught that you're just the product of your genes, your upbringing, your environment, your traumas, you lose agency. If everything is determined, then you're not responsible for who you are, which means you can't take credit for your virtues. This destroys the possibility of earned self-esteem. Rand's philosophy attacks all four enemies. Against the morality of sacrifice, she places the morality of rational self-interest. Your purpose is your own happiness. Your worth comes from pursuing and achieving it, not from giving it away. Against the morality of humility, she places the virtue of pride. Pride, properly understood, is moral ambitiousness. It's the commitment to be the best person you can be, and the recognition when you're living up to that commitment. Against the cult of the collective, she places the sovereignty of the individual. You are an end in yourself. Your life has value independent of any group. You don't need permission from the collective to exist or to value yourself. Against determinism, she places free will and choice. You are what you make yourself through your choices. This is both responsibility and liberation. If you've made bad choices, you can make better ones. Your self-worth is not fixed by your past. It's created by your present and future. Let me share what Rand wrote about the psychology of self-worth. Man's self-esteem is a profound moral need. It is the need to feel competent to live, to feel worthy of living, to feel worthy of happiness. This need is so strong that some men will die rather than face the knowledge that they are not adequate to life. Read that last sentence again. Some people would rather die than face their inadequacy. This is how deep the need for self-worth goes. It's not vanity, it's survival. But here's the key insight. The need for self-worth is not the same as having it. You can need it desperately while lacking it completely. The question is, how you meet the need. Some people try to meet it through denial, pretending they're worthy when they know they're not. This creates the fragile ego that lashes out at any criticism, because deep down there's nothing solid to stand on. Some try to meet it through others, seeking constant validation, becoming addicted to approval. This creates the dependent personality that collapses when approval is withdrawn. Some try to meet it through achievement without values, chasing success without caring about how they achieve it. This creates the hollow achiever who has everything and feels nothing. The only way to genuinely meet the need for self-worth is to actually become worthy, to develop real competence, to live by real values, to earn your own respect through becoming someone respectable. Third question, how have you been trying to meet your need for self-worth? Through denial? Through others' approval? Through achievement without values? Or through actually becoming someone you admire? This is the most important question in the video, because the strategy you've been using determines whether you'll ever feel genuinely worthy. Before we continue to practical applications, I need you to do something. If Rand's ideas about self-worth are opening something in you, share this video. Share it with someone who apologizes too much, who can't accept compliments, who sacrifices constantly but feels worthless, who needs to hear that valuing themselves is not just okay, but necessary. And subscribe to this channel. We're exploring ideas that can transform how you relate to yourself and the world. Let me now give you Rand's practical principles for building self-worth. First, commit to rationality. Your self-efficacy depends on your willingness to think, not to feel, not to wish. To think, to face reality, to use your mind as your primary tool for living. This means not evading uncomfortable truths, not believing things because they're pleasant, not deferring your judgment to others when you're capable of thinking for yourself. Every act of honest thinking builds self-efficacy. Every act of evasion erodes it. Second, define your values consciously. Don't just absorb values from your culture or family. Examine them. Ask if they serve your life. Choose them deliberately. Most people have never consciously chosen their values. They've inherited them, absorbed them, accepted them without examination. And then they wonder why living by these values doesn't make them feel worthy. It's because the values weren't chosen, weren't theirs, weren't integrated into a coherent vision of how to live. Third, achieve integrity. Once you know your values, live by them. Say what you mean. Do what you say. Be the same person in private that you are in public. Every time you betray your values, you lose self-respect. Every time you say yes when you mean no. Every time you pretend to believe something you don't. Every time you act against your own judgment to please others, you chip away at your sense of worth. Integrity is expensive. It costs you approval sometimes. It costs you comfort. But without it, self-worth is impossible. Fourth, pursue productive achievement. Rand believed that productive work is central to psychological health. Not just any work. Work that engages your mind. Work that creates value. Work that you can point to and say, I made this. The person who produces nothing, who only consumes, who contributes nothing to the world, struggles to feel worthy. Not because society looks down on them, but because they can't respect themselves. There's nothing to point to, nothing they've built, nothing that shows their life has created value. This doesn't mean you have to be a CEO or an artist. It means you have to create something, make something, contribute something, use your abilities, exercise your capacities, produce. Fifth, practice pride, not arrogance, not vanity, pride. The moral ambitiousness that says, I will be the best person I can be, and I will recognize when I am living well. Take credit for your achievements. Allow yourself to feel good about your virtues. Don't constantly minimize yourself to make others comfortable. You've earned what you've earned. Acknowledge it. Sixth, reject unearned guilt. Many people feel guilty for things that aren't wrong, for being successful, for having more than others, for being happy when others are suffering, for prioritizing their own needs. This guilt is not moral. It's the residue of a morality that says your happiness is wrong. Reject it. You are not obligated to feel bad for living well. You are not required to apologize for your achievements. You did not cause others problems by solving your own. Let me address objections. Some say Rand's philosophy leads to cruelty. If everyone just pursues their own interest, won't the strong exploit the weak? Rand's answer: rational self-interest forbids the initiation of force. Exploiting others is not in your genuine interest because it requires violating their rights, which undermines the social conditions that allow everyone to flourish. The person who builds their success on exploitation cannot have genuine self-worth because they know their success is stolen. Some say her philosophy leads to isolation. If you're not living for others, won't you end up alone? Rand's answer: rational self-interest includes valuing others. Love is a selfish value because the person you love adds to your life. Friendship is selfish because friends enhance your existence. The issue isn't whether you value others, but why. Do you value them because they genuinely add to your life, or because you think you're supposed to? Some say her philosophy doesn't work for everyone. What about people who can't compete, who aren't capable of great achievement? Rand's answer: self-worth comes from being the best you can be, not from being better than others. The person with limited abilities who uses them fully deserves more self-respect than the genius who wastes their gifts. The standard is your own potential, not comparison with others. Now let me tell you something about Rand's own life that's relevant here. She lived her philosophy. She worked with intense focus. She built her career from nothing in a foreign country with a foreign language. She said what she believed even when it made her unpopular. She refused to compromise her vision for commercial success. But she also had struggles. Her personal relationships were sometimes difficult. Her affair with Nathaniel Brandon ended in a painful public rupture. She could be harsh with those who disagreed with her. She was human, with human flaws. What's important is not that Rand was perfect, but that she lived by her standards. She had self-worth not because she claimed it, but because she earned it through decades of productive work, integrity, and commitment to her values. When she was asked what she was most proud of, she didn't say her books or her fame. She said she was proud of her philosophical achievement, of having created a philosophy she considered true. That's what mattered to her: the work, the creation, the exercise of her highest capacity. So where does this leave you? You have a need for self-worth that is as fundamental as hunger or thirst. You cannot live well without meeting this need, and you cannot meet it through shortcuts, through pretending, through borrowing worth from others. The only path is to build genuine self-worth by becoming someone you can genuinely respect. This means thinking for yourself, building the competence that creates self-efficacy, defining your values consciously so you know what you're living for, living with integrity so your actions match your principles, creating and producing so you have evidence of your own value, practicing pride in your achievements so you recognize your worth when you've earned it, rejecting unearned guilt so you don't sabotage yourself with false morality. This is not easy. It's the work of a lifetime, but it's the only work that leads to what you're really seeking, the feeling that you deserve to exist, to be happy, to live fully. Rand wrote, "The man who does not value himself cannot value anything or anyone. Think about that. If you don't believe you're worthy, how can you genuinely love others? You'll love them as a beggar loves a benefactor, out of need rather than appreciation. You'll give to them not from abundance but from emptiness, hoping to fill yourself through their response. The path to being good to others begins with being good to yourself. The path to loving others well begins with believing you're worthy of love. The path to contributing to the world begins with believing your contribution has value. Self-worth is not selfishness. It's the foundation of everything good you can be and do. Before you go, I need you to do something. If this video has changed how you see yourself, share it. Someone in your life is drowning in undeserved shame. Someone is apologizing for existing. Someone needs to hear that they have the right to value themselves. And subscribe to this channel. We're exploring the ideas that can transform not just how you think, but how you live. Ayn Rand died in 1982, having lived by her own philosophy for nearly 50 years in America. She was controversial. She was polarizing. She was called arrogant, selfish, harsh. But she had something that her critics often lacked: genuine self-respect. She knew who she was. She knew what she believed. She knew what she had built. And she didn't apologize for any of it. You don't have to agree with everything Rand believed to learn from her example. The lesson is simpler. You have the right to exist for your own sake. You have the right to pursue your own happiness. You have the right to value yourself, not because someone gave you permission, because it's the truth. Build the self-efficacy that comes from using your mind courageously. Build the self-respect that comes from living with integrity. Become someone you can admire, and never, ever apologize for it. That's what Ayn Rand taught. That's what self-worth really means. Now the question is simple. Will you claim yours?